Welcome back to the Roundtable. I'm Vox, and Avatar: The Last Airbender and its sequel, The Legend of Korra, has had a huge surge in popularity lately right here on the YouTube platform. Throughout the last year especially, tons of Avatar topics have risen up, including our homie Slice of Otaku, and its coverage of all the elements, too, right here on the Roundtable. We already had a Runaway Club on the series last year, and more recently looked at some of the most crazy moments in the series. With the other two hosts contributing, I thought it was time for me to throw my own hat into the ring. You guys know I love theories, and just because the story of Avatar concluded on screen with Korra back in 2014 doesn't mean there's nothing left to speculate and chew on. With Slice's coverage of the elements, Retro Nemo's top 10 moments, and the comment sections of the latter, one topic in particular has stuck with me: Bloodbending. Without a single ounce of doubt, the creepiest, deadliest form of bending within the world of Avatar that can make a viewer's skin crawl. Bloodbending is not an art to be taken lightly. Its reintroduction in Korra was a surprise to many, going from a one-off Halloween special-like appearance to having an integral role in Amon's arc could not have been any more clever. Yet, I'm not convinced Korra fully explored the potential of bloodbending, in particular, the elements that are capable of using it. There is an element aside from water, who many people speculate has the potential to craft their own variation of bloodbending: Earth. I've seen a lot of people suggest this in the comments, and there have been some heated debates on the Avatar Wiki. So today we're going to answer the question, can Earthbenders bloodbend? Let's dive in, shall we? Also, before we begin, quick shout out to all of our patrons over at patreon.com/roundtablevids, whose support ensures our future. If you want to help and even get a shout out, consider heading over and checking us out. Alright, I know at face value this may sound like an unresearched, inconceivable notion thrown into the wild just for clicks, but I can assure you I have done research and put plenty of thought into the theory before even fleshing out a script. I want to look at this from both sides, instead of immediately leaning towards yes or no. On a surface level, bloodbending is a natural evolution. Blood is liquid. Blood contains water. Thus, blood can be manipulated by a waterbender. However, when we think of earthbending, it's typically grounded in the concept of solids more than liquids. So how could an earthbender be able to manipulate another organic being's blood? Well, before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's look at the basics of bloodbending and earthbending. Starting with bloodbending, one of the most important factors to the bigger picture lies within its origin. Bloodbending was not a native ability within the water tribe. It was invented, or at the very least, discovered by Hama, a waterbender whose only appearance was in The Puppet Master. During the 100-Year War, Hama was imprisoned by the Fire Nation alongside the other waterbenders in the Southern Tribe. Being limited in her resources in the prison, caged and separated from the rest of her tribe, in conditions impossible to waterbend, Hama discovered during full moons the increase in power she received allowed her to manipulate the water in the bodies of rodents. As she continued to develop this technique, which she eventually named bloodbending, she was finally able to bloodbend a prison guard and liberate herself. Beyond its origin, bloodbending was eventually made public knowledge and banned by the United Republic of Nations. However, the technique was still honed by Yakone, who passed it on to his children Tarlok and Noatok, the latter who became Amon. Needless to say, bloodbending was a bit more fleshed out in Korra, amassing its arsenal. To recap what we witnessed in both series, bloodbenders can levitate others, control their bodies against their will, knock people unconscious, disrupt the functions of vital organs, psychic bloodbending, which is practicing the technique without being detected, and cutting off the bending of others by blocking their chi paths. Yet a huge drawback is, until Yakone, it was believed waterbenders could only bloodbend when empowered by the full moon. Yet again, due to evolution, Yakone pushed past his initial limits and learned how to bloodbend without the use of a moon, becoming a master at it. Now, let's pause this for a second and shift gears for a brief moment over to earthbending. Earthbending allows the bender in question to manipulate earth and rock in all their forms, including lava bending, sand bending, and mud bending. Well, you guys all watched book 2, yet there's one pretty neat variation of earthbending that changed everything: metal bending. Now, metal bending actually has similar roots to bloodbending, in the ways that it also wasn't native to the Earth Kingdom. Metal bending only came into existence after being invented by our own member of Team Avatar, Toph. It was a practice thought to be impossible, yet Toph brought the concept to fruition by focusing on the amounts of earth particles within the metal itself. This is another factor to to remember. Metalbending, much like Bloodbending, evolved as the franchise continued into Korra, as the lead character even mastered the technique herself. The variation of metal we see Korra bend for the first time was liquid metal. Alright, with these basics established, how could Earthbenders ever aim to cultivate their own spin on Bloodbending? Well, let's combine facts of the human body and suspension of disbelief, as this is a fictional animated property. First things first, there is metal in our body, although not in the way you may initially think. It's through iron found in our blood. Now this iron is the same element as the iron you may be thinking of, but it is in a new form entirely. It's an essential element for blood production, however it's not magnetic, but it's still a metal. In fact, it's largely believed that iron being a metal is the reason why our blood is red, functioning much like rust. However, as pure metal bending doesn't exist in Avatar, metal bending existing through particles of Earth, Earthbenders couldn't bend blood, right? Well, again, suspension of disbelief and evolution. We as human beings are organic, and I like to imagine somehow, through what we consume to keep up a healthy amount of iron, if some form of Earth particles don't already exist within us, as by the rules of the Avatar world, then it could wind up, even if digested shortly after, by what we put into our bodies. Off that logic, another issue presents itself: the amount of iron present in the human body. Yes, this metal may course through our veins, but that doesn't mean it's a plentiful amount. The iron in our body cannot be equated to the size of the cage Toph was restricted in. There's really no disputing this. At most, you would have to pull off what was done in the second X-Men film, and inject more iron into someone, if you expect an Earthbender to just lift up someone like Magneto did. Keep in mind, Earthbenders have gone in the territory of other elements before. For example, lava bending. When the concept was first introduced, I think we would have all associated such a thing with firebenders only. Originally, it was stated to be a feat only achievable by the Avatar. This originates from Avatar Extras, a re-airing of the series on Nicktoons that featured on-screen trivia from series writer Joshua Hamilton. It was only later in Korra that it was retconned as something Earthbenders alone could do. Although, once again, this may just be evolution at play. Not to mention, Toph was able to bend a meteor that crashed into the planet, though the meteor itself didn't hail from Earth. Alongside meteors, Earthbenders can manipulate crystals, coals, and other materials that hail from Earth. What I'm trying to get at here is what an Earthbender can manipulate is a very broad spectrum. But yet again, most of these are rooted in the idea that anything an Earthbender has control over stems from the impurities of Earth within it. The Legend of Korra did make a point to create suits so purified that they couldn't be metal bended by an Earthbender. So that does bring us to the notion that everything else within the human body, its blood especially, would dilute the iron from being manipulated by an Earthbender. I have a retort to that dilemma, however. Korra being poisoned by the Red Lotus. Mercury was inserted into Korra's body in an attempt to poison her, trigger the Avatar state, and put an end to the Avatar cycle once and for all. Obviously, they didn't succeed, but some of the Mercury remained inside of Korra until Book 4, where, after spending some time with Toph, Korra was able to bend the remaining Mercury out of herself with Earthbending. And I would wager that Mercury in itself would have been diluted at some point by the body. I know it's not quite a one-on-one comparison. Mercury in its raw state was injected into Korra as opposed to the iron naturally in her body, but hey, leave no stone unturned. But I'm not throwing in the towel just yet, as this brings me to my own conclusion. Straightforward, could Earthbenders bloodbend? I'm going to say yes, it's possible, but not in the same manner that Hama, Yakone, Tarlok, or Noatak was bloodbending others. At most, due to such low amounts of iron in the bloodstream compared to actual metal objects, it'd be akin to the psychic use of bloodbending, where an Earthbender had to really focus in on the iron in someone's body to paralyze their movements, leaving Waterbenders to still own the most powerful form of bloodbending. A hypothetical Earthbender bloodbend would still be useful in combat in this scenario. Slowing down your opponent or immobilizing them can go a very long way. This doesn't mean any Earthbender who could pick up metal bending could also pick up bloodbending. However, I imagine it would take a very skilled warrior who practiced the craft for years and years to even attempt such a thing. Someone like Toph, who grew up to be the most powerful Earthbender on the planet, as we saw in Legend of Korra. Benefit of the doubt though, again, there's a evolution. Evolution allowed waterbenders to bloodbend without the assistance of a full moon. So perhaps the idea of earthbenders evolving out of the use of earth particles to bend metal, eventually creating and mastering their own bloodbending, passing it on to future generations, isn't completely out of the picture. There's also the notion of metal benders having a higher tolerance to bloodbending than other benders, gaining a grip on the iron in their blood to fight back. Resist! All of this really just makes me hungry for a new Avatar series. Hopefully one a bit more well received than Korra, one that won't get burned by the network. But what do you guys think? With all the information presented here, is it possible for an earthbender to learn any form of bloodbending? Let's get a dialogue going. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, or you can tweet them at Roundtable Vids. And for my own hot takes, you can find me at AustricVox. We're also on Instagram. Help the Roundtable grow by either becoming a member of this channel or supporting us on Patreon. Link in the description. If you enjoyed this video, throw it a like, and subscribe to the Roundtable for more great cartoon content. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. AustricVox, out.